welcome. Once again, another edition of Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Lewis Bright Raven. It is Friday. That means it's another weekend movie discussion. And welcome once again, my co-host, John Norris, also known as Figaro.
Good evening, everyone.
This week we're talking horror theme. We've got two films to discuss. And, well, as you can see, the undying horror of mediocre movies is kind of our theme today.
Yep.
But hopefully we won't be too hard on things. I mean, we're going to be a little bit rough, I guess, but we'll try and be as fair as possible. Our first discussion of the day is for House of Shadows 2020, written and directed by Nicholas Winter, produced by Jeet Thakrar, Lucinda Rhodes Thakrar, and Sammy Meesum, starring Elena Delia, Luke Bailey, Yvonne May, Harriet Madeley, and Sam Newman. The production company is Picture Perfect. The distributor was 101 Films International, worldwide in all media. There was no theatrical release in the U.S. It was released in the U.K. on October 5th, 2020, and in Canada on October 20th, 2020, via the internet release in Canada. The genre is horror, and the runtime is 1 hour and 15 minutes. What it's about. Basically, this is a haunted house type story. It follows the lead character, Sarah, and her boyfriend, Jared, who visit a house that she's inherited from her recently deceased mother that she didn't even know her mother owned. As the couple explore the property, Sarah hopes to come to some sort of understanding and closure to the deaths of her mother and her sister Megan because she has been unable to deal with them. They are met by an odd neighbor, Anna Sophia, who has stocked the fridge, pantries, and wine drawer in anticipation of their arrival at the secluded location. From the opening scene, a feeling of claustrophobia descends. The feeling grows as the couple experience strange happenings, different sound effects, different things that affect their physical abilities. They get headaches, they get physical pains in their bodies that are inexplicable at the time. Their neighbor is off in how they behave, and their cell phones don't have any reception, except to receive a single call from beyond from her dead sister, Megan, in one scene. Jared and Sarah, as I said, they suffer headaches and other physical maladies as something seems to be invading their thoughts and seeking their souls. Haunted by these ghosts, they must uncover the truth behind the curse before they become the next victims. Well, John, I'm going to let you say what you think first.
Well, you just said we were going to try to be fair, and I tried to think of something nice to say about this movie, and I really can't. You said it's an hour and 15 minutes long, but for me, it felt like it took 3 hours to watch this movie. It just plodded along.
Yeah,
so
I paused the DVD more than once to see how much moral of the movie was left, which is never a good sign. I agree.
I just thought, I guess it's interesting that both of the movies we're talking about tonight are low budget B movies, but one is better constructed than the other, and it's not this one. I just felt like the acting was just wooden, just stiff.
Are you saying the lead is wooden and stiff, or just the cast as a whole?
The cast as a whole.
I'll agree with that. I think the lead actress did well with what she was given. I think the whole cast actually did very well in terms of potential, but the story is so generic and predictable that there's not much to offer them to work with.
And plus, I don't know if you felt this, but it, especially from the boyfriend, it seemed like half the time he was either mumbling his lines or just the sound was kind of muffled. But there were
but a lot of his lines was type stuff, and when you come out of that and then start talking, it does sound like mumbling, for one thing, and another thing is his accent. They all have kind of like a British type accent, and just the way his cadence of speaking. I think that's where you got the mumbling sense from him. Actually, the best scene from him was when he was possessed and was tied up on the floor and was screaming at the end of the film. And I don't, he had some great facial expressions that I was like, I actually paused to see how much of that was his facial expressions and how much of it might have been CGI over his face. That's how good his facial expressions were. But other than that, I have to agree with you, with him. But I thought I think there was some sound problems in the film too. I mean, it wasn't just him. I mean, the neighbor was hard to understand at times too. Yeah. So I think it was more their sound check rather than necessarily their performances. That being said, the film isn't that really scary. And there's a few scenes that were kind of jumpy type moments, but there was a few other things that just weren't really well done. When Jared goes after her with the sword and falls over the couch. I mean, that looked like a stage play attack, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Especially from the camera angle, it just looked terrible. But then again, it was like, is it bad acting there, or was he fighting the control of the possessed entity? Because it seemed like he was fighting it the whole time. But is that why he did that, or is it what happened there? It didn't quite work for me. I do think, however, that as good as the lead actress is in the film, the character is emotionally distant.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard for the audience to connect with her as a character. We really don't get into her head enough to understand what it is until everything's explained at the very tail end of the film of what her family ancestry is and why her mother and sister are dead. And I also didn't like how it's sort of at the end, there's kind of like these loose ends involving fragmented timelines. There's a point where Sarah leaves the house to try and get help and supposedly runs down the road because they don't have a car to leave. And she gets down the road to the next place, and it's actually her own place, only earlier in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't quite make some sense as to what was going on. I think that caused some confusion for viewers as well. But I don't know. It's pretty straightforward modern B movie, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, I think you're a little rough on it, but it's not like this is a horrible movie per se. It's just kind of like a standard low budget, straight to DVD film. And a lot of those don't get very high ratings, unfortunately. But I do think the actress who does the lead has a lot of potential. I'd like to see some work from her and something where she actually gets a script that's worth working on.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jean gives it a 1, unfortunately. Yeah. And I gave it 2 out of 5.
Yeah, so, I just didn't connect with it at all.
Yeah, I understand. Oh, there we go. Next one is The Undying Monster from 1942, also known as The Hammond Mystery. Directed by John Brown, screenplay by Lily Hayward and Michael Jacoby, based on The Undying Monster novel by Jesse Douglas Carouche. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Produced by Brian Foy and William Getz, starring James Ellison, Heather Angel, John Howard, Bramwell Fletcher, Heather Thatcher, Aubrey Mather, Hallowell Hobbs, Ely Malion, and Valerie Traxler. It's actually got under an hour. I think it's like 57 minutes. Very short film. I'll let you go ahead and read what it's about.
The Hammond family has been cursed since the Crusades, with family members either dying or committing suicide under mysterious circumstances. When 2 people, Kate O'Malley and Oliver Hammond, are attacked by an unknown creature near the Hammond estate, a Scotland Yard scientist, Robert Curtis, and his sidekick Christie are dispatched to investigate. Although the local townspeople are convinced that the attacks are the result of the Hammond family curse, Curtis seeks a more scientific explanation. Curtis's investigation at the Hammond household reveals a number of unusual circumstances, including slamming doors and clanking chains, a recently entered secret room supposedly locked for years, and a statue of a strange dog-like creature in the Hammond family crypt. Curtis sort of fumbles about in his questioning, implying motive for the attacks by several different parties, but most notably from Dr. Jeff Colbert. During his investigation, Kate O'Malley dies from her injuries, and the case is sent to a coroner's jury for judgment. Upon hearing testimony from members of the Hammond family and their associates, the jury rules that the victim died at the hand of an unknown person or creature of unknown species. After the ruling, Curtis looks for evidence upon the victim's body. He finds a hair that he later identifies as a wolf's, but the hair disappears mysteriously soon after he analyzes it. Baffled, Curtis is summoned to the estate as the monster attacks again, this time kidnapping Helga Hammond, but Curtis and the police chase him down. When shot, the monster transforms into Oliver Hammond and dies. Afterwards, Dr. Jeff Colbert, a friend of the Hammonds, reveals that the men in the Hammond family have been afflicted with lycanthropy for generations. That is, they are werewolves, and he had been attempting to cure them of the disease. Curtis had suspected Colbert of being the killer because Colbert had been defensive and circumvented his investigation. But with Oliver's death, it seems the curse has been lifted.
Okay. Oops. Back. We get a little bit too close sometimes on these camera angles there. Yeah, I'm okay with this one, I guess. I mean, there's things I don't like. I didn't like the title of the movie, because how can it be The Undying Monster when the monster dies at the end of the film? And of course, there is the debate of whether or not shooting a werewolf without using silver bullets would kill him or not. Though in this case, Oliver Hammond is climbing up the side of a cliff when he gets shot, so the fall would probably kill him anyway, even if the shots didn't. Mm-hmm. I also didn't like how the werewolf really isn't shown until the very end of the movie. While I think the cinematography and lighting capture great atmosphere for the story, I think we could and should have seen much more than we did of the werewolf. But then again, given how the makeup looked at that might be why they didn't show him until the end. It's hard to say, because the face that you see on the disc poster here is better than what was in the film by a long shot. But I don't know. That was a little bit annoying to me, I guess. And lastly, I thought the film was too short. Like I said, it's like 57 minutes, I think. And the plot gets hastened to reach the conclusion. I think it would have been better with another 10 or 15 minutes of exposition and explanation of what was going on. Maybe have a scene of Hammond as the werewolf that we actually got to see something other than him getting shot and killed. Something like that would have improved the film, I think.
Yeah. I agree. It could have been and should have been a bit longer with more exposition. I do think the film definitely had the cinematography going for it, and unfortunately, I had to watch it. I think as you did on YouTube.
No, I watched the Undying on. I watched both of them on DVD because I had them on DVD.
I wish I had thought to check my library for a DVD copy, which they did have, because the picture quality wasn't great on the YouTube version, but actually the cinematographer for this movie, Lucian Ballard, actually went on to have a great career. He shot a lot of westerns like True Grit and The Wild Bunch. So this was kind of early in his career. But I think the cinematography is one of the better things about the movie.
Sure, I agree on that. The cast is kind of, well, there's some woodenness in this cast too, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I mean, Hammond, the one who is the werewolf, is like, I don't know. I could not get into him as a character. As you said, I said Curtis fumbles about. It's not that he so much fumbles about, but he's. It's almost like an early Columbo, but not intentionally.
Yeah.
Because they didn't write his character serious enough because they were trying to do too much comedy to ease it up a little bit, I guess. I don't know. I did not like Christie as a character. Well, she's more or less comic relief in the film, and it did not need comic relief, in my opinion. There wasn't anything there to relieve. It wasn't that serious of a movie, and again, that's kind of because they didn't really do anything so much scary. I mean, he was debunking anything that was scary anyway, so to speak, in the film. So I wish I didn't really see the point of her in the film in there. And that, I'm not saying the actress who portrayed the character did bad. It's just the writing wasn't that great. I did ask my dad. I mean, this is 42, is the year before he was born, but I asked him when he was a kid and he went to the theater, were films of this era this short? And he stopped and thought about it. He goes, yeah, a lot of them were under an hour. Because
especially
when you went to the theater, you would go see 2 back-to-back films.
Right.
And so they make you an hour to an hour and 10 minutes each. Plus, you usually got a 8 to 15 minute animated feature before it.
And newsreels.
And newsreels, exactly. So that's kind of why it was. I was like, oh, well, that's probably why they're so much shorter.
Yep.
In that respect. So that was kind of interesting to think about, because that kind of makes me want to go find more movies of that era that are shorter to see the difference in how people pace things in the shorter amount of time, because these days it's like they film and film and film and film and film and then try to edit it out. And then, oh, well, that's not the whole film. Here's a director's cut that's 6 hours long.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, Jesus. I mean, people like Del Toro and Snyder and Peter Jackson would be able to make a film in 1942. They wouldn't have enough time. What do you mean I only got 40 minutes to make a film? What are you talking about?
Yeah. For me, it's definitely a film that it turned out to be not what I expected based on a title called The Undying Monster. And and sometimes having a film not be what you expected isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it can turn out to be a good thing, and sometimes a not so good thing. And I think this time it was more of a not so good thing. And something I just thought about today is this movie was, I think we said 1942. And, you consider that a year earlier, The Wolfman had been released. And it's like this is
definitely a knockoff of The Wolfman.
This definitely felt like a step back instead of a step forward.
Yeah, it was perceived by many as a cheap knockoff of The Wolfman, and not a very good one. And the thing is, I would not have done a Wolfman. I would have turned him into something else, maybe a Jekyll and Hyde type thing as opposed to the Wolfman. And I would have probably done something a little bit where he is undying. They don't know how to kill him. Rather than the short, well, there's a bunch of people who shot him, he falls off the side of a cliff. It would have been much more interesting to see him survive that and almost be like a zombified, come back from the dead type thing where he's full of the bullet holes or whatever. And the doctor has like I'm trying to think, a dart gun or something that has the cure, and it cures him, but because he's got the wounds, he dies. That's what I probably would have done, because he still needs time to heal from the injuries,
right?
But he wouldn't be able to, but he kills him basically so that he won't kill his sister by in his rage or whatever. That's what I probably would have done there. But again, this is something that had a lot of potential. I would love to see a remake done differently in modern. But for what it is, I think we both agree it's an average to slightly below average film. And we both gave it 2.5 stars.
Yep.
So, we're a little, like I said, we were a little bit rough on things this week. But I wouldn't tell you not to go see Undying Monster. It's actually not that bad a film. It's fun enough to watch for an hour. House of Shadows, I wouldn't recommend. That's about the truth I can say of that. So
I would agree. I would say definitely don't set your expectations too high for the Undying Monster. I think you'll enjoy it more if you go in with lower expectations.
Well, I didn't have any expectations on it. I enjoyed it fine, but I also was realistic about what the quality of it was or wasn't. But yeah, I agree with you. Go in with, I guess you could say, lower expectations. So next week, two of the films we'll be talking about is the 1947 and 2021 editions of Nightmare Alley. How good was the original version of this movie, and how does the current version by Guillermo del Toro stack up? We're going to discuss both of these films and try to answer that question. And we're also going to review Crimson Peak. Is that the name of it?
Yes.
Is that another Guillermo del Toro movie?
It is.
Okay, so we'll be doing a lot of Guillermo del Toro next week. And that's what we'll be talking about on next Friday's show. In the meantime, depending on what's going on this weekend, I will either have a Saturday or Saturday and Sunday live draw episode. And then starting next week, hopefully we'll get back into the regular scheduled programming for Quoth the Raven and start getting our reviews back in during the week and letting people know what I got in the stores and stuff like that. And what are you doing next week?
Well, next week, assuming they don't cancel it due to high COVID numbers, Wednesday and Thursday, I'll have my first appointments for temporary crowns for my teeth.
Okay.
I was supposed to have already had those first appointments, but due to high COVID numbers,
Right.
MSC followed protocol, and they made all their doctors get retested. And fortunately, the person I'll be seeing didn't have it, but again, they're just following protocol.
Makes sense. All right. So hopefully, come Friday, you won't have a mouth that's too sore to talk. Yeah. That's always fun. Some people ask why I wasn't on this week. That's because I had to go to the doctor myself. Turns out that I may have hip arthritis, and they were giving me some medication and pain management for that, basically. And if that doesn't work out, then I'll see a specialist. But hopefully, when you get to middle age, folks, it doesn't feel good, unfortunately. I think we both would love to have a time turner that could de-age us like about 20, 30 years, right?
Yeah.
That's the first thing we want for Christmas from 2022. De-age. But yeah, that's pretty much what's going on for the next week upcoming. Someone asked, did I get it's a something that I ordered Kickstarter wise. I did get something in the mail today. I haven't opened it yet. It might be your package, but I'll review that probably tomorrow. So, because I haven't opened it yet. So if that's what it is, I'll let you guys know. But I think that's what it is. And actually, I might actually say that for next week, because it's very similar to the Nightmare Alley stuff.
Ooh.
In a way. So I might save it for next week. I don't know. We'll see.
I am intrigued now.
Yeah. Well, what it is it's about a carny, and with all the different weirdos and stuff. So yeah. So I'll share that. I'll definitely have to share it now that I've mentioned it. I want to talk about it next week, but I'll probably bring it on and talk about it separately on its own as well. So that's half hour in, and I think that's it for today. As always, we thank you for watching the show. If you enjoyed the show, or you think others might, we'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to continue to get support from this channel. As always, I thank you for your support. If you want to reach me on social media, I'm at Facebook at Lewis.BrightRaven and at Twitter at LewisBrightRave2. You can see some of my artwork at deviantart.com/BrightRaven. You've been watching Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright-Raven exclusively on YouTube. If you have questions or comments, Quoth the Raven LBR72 at gmail.com is the address to try and reach me at. And if I don't get back to you through that channel, try lewisbrightraven@yahoo.com. Got anything else to add at the end here, John?
No, y'all can check me out on Facebook at John Norris if you want to.
Okay. So we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Good night, everybody.